All right, and welcome to the Zone Live, Week 9 of the high school football season. Week 9 kind of sounds odd to say. We just put the finishing touches on the ninth zone that'll run in the Longview News Journal on Friday. Only a couple more of those left in the regular season. It's moving right along, guys. I'm Jack Stallard. I'm sports editor at the Longview News Journal. To my left, as always, Hayden Henry. To my right, Brandon Ogden. And going to talk some football. Guys, just jumping into this real quick. Yeah, I know the last 2 weeks of the season obviously are going to settle everything. I mean, next week, they're all must-win games next week, and then that final week, everything will shake out. But to me, this is still a really big week. I mean, I just looking at this, if regardless of what your record is right now, to me, this is a huge week. I mean, if you're undefeated in district play, you're looking at Longview and Henderson and Chapel Hill and Gilmer and Gladewater and Hugh Springs, and I'm not going to list them all. But if you're undefeated right now, you really got a chance to separate yourself. I think it's a big week there. If you're sitting at 1-1, if you picked up a win, in your first week and then you lost one, or if you lost one and then you won one, but you're sitting at 1-1, this keeps you alive. This keeps you alive in the playoff hunt, keeps you alive for even a possible district championship. And I think if you're 0-2 or 0-3, 0-4, whatever in your district, obviously it's now or never for you. You've got to get a win this week. Or you can start talking about basketball season. So huge week. I think this, obviously the last 2 weeks settle it all, but this is time to really get it going, and you can do some good things for your football team. Talk about some of the games. We got some really good games this week. Our etvarsity.com game of the week, Ore City at Union Grove, and who thought Brandon said it early in the week. Who would have thought we would have been saying that at the start of the season? And not a knock on these two teams, but. Union Grove, I think, is a team that made a really good step last year, and did some good things. Ore City, to me, this team just come out of nowhere. Brandon, you wrote the preview capsule on this. Talk a little bit about this game. It's Ore City at Union Grove, Friday night at Glenn Johnson Stadium in Union Grove.
And when you get to this point of the season, it's hard to find teams that are both 7-0 meeting against each other, but that's what we got here. So that brings excitement in itself, and you got two programs that aren't the history-based programs that most are used to around East Texas, but they're both having really good seasons. And both these teams, they have high goals. Obviously now throughout the playoffs. So this is a big step to get some positioning, fight for a district title. And both these teams, they could be playing deep into December, and this is a good test to see where they're at. And Ore City, they fell behind 21-0 last week against Big Sandy, and they really showed their resolve by coming back and winning that game 28-21. And Union Grove, they haven't been challenged lately. They've been winning pretty handily the last several weeks. They haven't been challenged since early in the season. So this could be a test for them to kind of measure. Before the playoffs, you don't want to have too many easy ones before the playoffs start. You need to be tested, and this will be a good test for both teams.
Exactly. Hayden, what are your thoughts on this one?
All right, I think this one's going to come down to turnovers. And, I saw Union Grove on the first day of fall, and one thing that really stuck out to me was how disciplined they are. And then looking at their stats to this point in the season, obviously that discipline has stuck with them. So I think turnovers, whoever can limit their mistakes is going to walk away still undefeated after this one.
Exactly, and I'm happy for both these programs. I mean, again, great coaches at both schools. Roger Adams at Union Grove, I visited with him last year. Had a kid sign a scholarship, and he took me and showed me their weight room. He's real proud of that, and he said, Jack, these kids live in this weight room. They love coming here now and working out together, being a team, and that's probably been something that's been lacking out there. Ore City, again, Tracy Blankenship, he's a veteran coach, coached for a long time at White Oak. He knows what he's doing. I think this is just a case of a bunch of kids buying into the system, understanding that we've got some good coaches. Let's listen to what they have to say. Working hard. Obviously, they got some talent. I think it's a great story. Both of these programs, and should be a great game in Union Grove on Friday night. Let's move on. Let's go. Let's talk about some of the larger schools. Mount Pleasant at Longview. Cliche, you could call it a trap game. You're looking at a good Longview team and an 0-7 Mount Pleasant team. I'm not really worried about that. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Mount Pleasant has potential. They've got some weapons, but I don't see a problem for Longview in this one. But Hayden, what have you seen going out to practice and talking to the coach and talking to some of the kids this week? What have you seen from the Lobos?
Well, this win puts them in the postseason for the 14th straight year, which has obviously been the reason they're doing all this, the reason they battled through the ups and downs they've had this season, ups of late, especially last week. Not a big win, but a really good win against a pretty solid Texas High team on the road. Had a tough place to play at Tiger Stadium up there. Got down to a one-possession game at one point. And it was really a three-phase win for Longview. Offense was opportunistic, defense was shut down, and the kicking game really shined. They had a field goal, forced a turnover on a punt, and faked a field goal or a point after attempt for the first time. So really a good three-phase win for them last week. This week it's about keeping that going. An area that's really stood out to me over the past couple of games, past 3 weeks, they're 20 and 29 on third down, which is huge. And last week they passed the ball for a season low 8 times. So I think they've been working on balance a little more this week. Obviously they're going to run the ball. Bread and butter there, but I think open up the passing game's going to be a focus this week. The defense, 1.3 yards per carry in district action. They faced Marshall and Texas High, 2 solid running game teams. On the season, that's still 3 yards per touch against 7-0 run. The defense has come away with touchdowns in 4 straight games. They've had 9 interceptions in district action, 11 overall. Emerald Dean has 3 with a pick 6. Keenan Madden 3 with a fumble recovery touchdown and a pick 6. Another big area defensively has been the linebacker level. Jalen Jackson, Marco Gonzalez, really solid. They're really turning up the pressure, especially in district action. They got 5. They're combined for 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, in the last 3 games. I think that's an area that's really key for them. Mount Pleasant, still averaging 299.3 yards a game. 3 losses have come by less than combined 5 points. I don't know how many times I just said combined there. But their quarterback, Joseph Griffin, throwing for over 1,200 yards, 17 touchdowns. They got 2 solid wide receivers. A junior with Arias Patterson getting some interest from Tulsa. Overall, Longview leads the series 7-1-1 going back to 1924. The last 2 times these teams met in district action in 08 and 09, Longview won both by a combined 95-7. So, continued improvement, like we said every week. I think it's going to happen. I think, going back, this is going to just fall in line with the last 2 times these teams meet. Longview walks away easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think, obviously Mount Pleasant does have some weapons. I mean, they've got a kid with 35 catches, 691 yards, 9 touchdowns. I mean, they've got weapons, but I think this is Longview's game. And, you mentioned that this would clinch a playoff spot for them for the 14th straight year. It would also be a district championship, 9 out of 10 years under Coach John King. And that's what the Lobos play. They play for that gold ball.
And that won't be sealed up in this one, but then
right,
that's another.
Yeah, that's where they're looking though. That's where they're heading, and that's what they're looking ahead to. But again, you don't want to overlook Mount Pleasant. So we'll see what happens there. A couple other games in that district: Texas High at Marshall. Might be a few athletes on the field in that one. That should be a lot of fun.
That should be a pretty good one, yeah.
And Greenville and Hallsville, you can say the same thing. Last week we talked about Hallsville getting ready to play Sulphur Springs, and I made the comment that Hallsville does not want to get in a track meet with Sulphur Springs, and unfortunately for the Bobcats, that's what happened. It ended up 49-42. They lost. Larry Pryor had a huge week. He was just named Built Ford Tough Player of the Week in Class 5A today. Great athlete there. So you can kind of say the same thing this week for the Bobcats. They don't want to try to match Greenville score for score. Greenville's sitting at 1-3, but they have some outstanding weapons. Got a kid receiver, he's caught 19 passes, 9 of them have gone for touchdowns. He's averaging 33 yards a catch. So, Hallsville needs to control the clock and keep those athletes off the field. And, we'll see what happens there.
You also got Sulphur Springs and Pine Tree in that district.
Sulphur Springs and Pine Tree, that should be a lot of fun. I mean, Pine Tree's looking like they're turning the corner, I think.
Yeah, they gave Texas High fits 2 weeks ago, fell short 31-21. Then last week they got in a tough spot at the end against Mount Pleasant, and they got an interception when they needed to when Mount Pleasant was driving, and got that first win and first district win since 2011. It's going to be a tough one Friday night though, Sulphur Springs. But if you want to see 2 of the best athletes in East Texas, Larry Pryor and Mason Hayes, no matter what the score is, those 2 are going to make some plays that are going to make it worth the price of admission.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you've seen Pine Tree now. Do you see the heading in the right direction that I'm talking about as far as, everything's finally clicking on offense. I think they're looking really good. I'm seeing some really good numbers on defense.
Well, and on defense too, I was looking the other day. Outside of Takanya Redden, who's their leading tackler, he's a senior. The rest of their defense is juniors and sophomores that's making plays. They got a lot of youngsters making plays on that defense, and they really made some big plays last week. I mean, they wouldn't have won if they give up some yards, but when they needed a play on third down, especially late in the game. That's what Coach Collins talked when I talked to him last Saturday after that win. When they really needed to play late in the game, they had kids step up and make that play. And on offense, they're starting to figure it out. Their offensive line looked the best I've seen all year last week. The games I've seen them, they didn't get false start penalties. They made their blocks and set up their teammates. So that was a big key.
That'd be big for them. You talk about the penalties and the and turnovers. I think Pine Tree is not at a level right now that they can have the penalties and turnovers and still win a game. I think Longview can overcome stuff like that. Some of these teams can. Pine Tree's not there yet, so they need to play good, solid football. And I think that's what happened last week, and they got a W. So good for the Pirates there. Some other big games. One in town is Tatum at Spring Hill. Spring Hill's beat up. But I tell you what, you won't find a team that plays harder than Spring Hill. I mean, Coach Sartain's got those kids, and I think I've said it before. Every sport, it's that way. Spring Hill kids just they get after it no matter what. So you don't want to take them lightly. You got to be wary of an explosive Tatum team. They scored at least 30 points in 5 of their 7 games this year. So you got to hopefully Spring Hill can. If Spring Hill's going to win this game, they've got to just contain. Watch out for big plays and just play really good, solid defense, good fundamental defense, and try to put some points on board. Their offenses look better. But one game we haven't talked about, and we've got several to hit on here, but Chapel Hill and Kilgore. This one, guys, I talked about there's still 2 weeks after this, but I think this is a must-win game for Kilgore. For several reasons. I mean, number one, you're 1-1. Obviously, you don't want to fall to 1-2 and get too far behind, but Kilgore needs some confidence right now. Kilgore. They played such a tough schedule. They lost close games. Then they go to Carthage last week. They lose their starting quarterback. I think Carthage kind of keyed on the run game there, and they just they weren't able to get the ball going. Kilgore needs a win in this ball game, and it would have to be against a good Chapel Hill team.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most surprising scores I saw from last week with Carthage. I have a buddy who's been to every Carthage game this season. He said hands down was the best game that the Carthage Bulldogs have played last week in the 21-7 wins. But like you said, Kilgore must win against Chapel Hill.
Yeah, and both teams still have to play Henderson, so it's going to be a big one for both Chapel Hill and Kilgore. With Chapel Hill's got Henderson next week, and then Kilgore has them in 2 weeks. So you better get this one.
Yeah, I mean Kilgore's just they're struggling right now, and I think a win in this one would turn things around. We have a question.
I don't know if you'll get to this game, but what happened to Overton this year? Thought they'd be much more improved.
Yeah, I'll be honest, we don't hear much from Overton. But we did get some stats this week, and they've got good numbers. I think part of what's happened to Overton is they're playing a tough schedule. I think just again, I'm going strictly on numbers that we've getting. We're getting statistics. They'll be in the zone this week. They're pretty solid running the football. Good defensive numbers.
And it looked like they had a quarterback change, and it looks like the kid they've put in there now, his numbers pretty good. But it looks like they had a different kid than started the year. But like you said, that's not what I noticed yesterday when I was typing up stats and stuff too. That they had some really good numbers, and it's going to be a tough one this week against Mount Enterprise, explosive team. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to a couple other games that want to get to here. We mentioned Carthage earlier. I think a big game for the Bulldogs against Brownsboro, and one thing looking at Brandon's capsule this week is preview. Carthage hadn't scored more than 22 points in a game this season, and that's very un-Carthage-like. But I believe this week, and I'm just going to throw it out there, I'm making a prediction. I think Jared Blissett has a monster game this week. I mean, obviously they're playing a Brownsboro team that's giving up 41 points a game. I think Jared Blissett is going to have a huge game. Seemed to have a running game going last week with a kid, had over 100 yards. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're running out of time. The last game I wanted to get to is a Saturday game, White Oak and Harmony. That one's going to be at Pine Tree Stadium. It's the KYKX game of the week. It's been moved from Lobo to Pine Tree Pirate Stadium. To be honest, guys, I had written White Oak off this year. And I don't know But then they came back with a big win last week against a pretty good Sabine team. And just really, they lost their starting quarterback before that game started, and they put a young man in, Cade Palmer. He's our Offensive Player of the Week this week, etvarsity.com, Offensive Player of the Week. All that kid did was throw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. So, we'll see. Harmony's a good football team. We'll see what the Roughnecks can do this week, see if they can keep it going. But, all right, we're out of time for this week. Zip through a lot of games, a lot of good games. Be sure and pick up the Longview News Journal Saturday for all your results. Check etvarsity.com. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be out there all night Friday night. If you need to know a score, that's where to go, etvarsity.com. So have a good week and have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week, 5:30 on Wednesday.